This is definitely not what you thought it was.
We'll just have to treat it as an adventure.
Herzog, it's so nice of you to join the podcast today. How's your day going?
Oh, first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure. I have done a few podcasts now in recent years, as this has become a popular internet form of entertainment, and I've been viral many times on them. For the things that I say, people find I am very humorous, but it is always a nice time to be on a podcast, so I much appreciate your invitation.
That's so good. That's so good. It makes me realize that he really is kind of belabored in his voice, right? He does feel like he's struggling to get the words out a little bit.
It's really breathy. You have to kind of close up the throat and then push the air out as you speak. But still emphasize those words because you really want to get your point across to be understood very clearly and precisely.
You could just, well, this podcast will be called How to Speak Like Werner Herzog.
No one can speak like me. Many people have tried it, but they don't capture my essence. This is the problem. They don't understand who I really am.
Yeah, and I mean, how could they? You know, you are a man of many depths of life, and
people don't understand. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was born at the end of the World War. I was actually born while it was still going on, and my mother took us as children and fled to the mountains because our city in Munich was being bombed so heavily.
And that was in Germany. What was that like?
I don't have memories really of destruction, but I remember being woken up in the middle of the night. My mother, she wrapped us in blankets. It was the middle of winter, and she took us outside and she said, "Look, you have to witness this." And it was pitch black, but there on the horizon was a red-orange glow. And she said, "That is the nearby city of Hermsdorf being razed to the ground." And so these memories, they stayed with me my entire life.
Wow, that sounds horrifying, really. It sounds like a sort of trauma that you may be carrying with you. Do you feel like that influenced you in terms of the type of films that you make and what you're drawn to?
Well, everyone is always influenced by where they come from, and certainly my experiences as a child, as a teen, influenced me to want to explore the world, the entire world, and try to understand every extremity of human experience. But there were other people, the people coming up in Germany at the same time that I was making films. They were making films, Fassbinder, Wim Wenders, and they made very different films from me. So I can't say how much of it is intrinsic to me and how much of it is my circumstances. It's hard to tell these things, you never really know.
I mean, that's true. I would say that, whether or not what happened when you were young had an influence on the types of films you were to make. I think it definitely seems to have given you a kind of advantage at making connections and friendships with people who you would star in your films and work on films with. And I'm thinking of, today we're going to talk about Aguirre, Wrath of God, which was one of your first films. And
yes,
yeah, and just the things that whole cast and crew went through, what you were trying to do with this film was truly breathtaking and amazing.
Yes, and I appreciate you saying that. And what is the name of the podcast that we are on now?
Oh, thanks for for mentioning that. We just dove right in, didn't we? Yeah, this is the unauthorized, some like it unauthorized podcast. And usually I'm here with my co-host Jay Brooks Young, but today it's just me and you. And my name's Zach Domes. And
unfortunate, but I'm so happy to be here with you, the smarter, more interesting brother.
Oh, I appreciate that. I would definitely like to differ with that, but I appreciate that, Werner. I really do. But yeah, so when it comes to Aguirre, I know you probably have many conversations about it and all that. But when we just to start, maybe I'll ask, like, what are your thoughts and feelings about that film now in your life now? How do you think back on it as it is today?
Well, it was a new level of exploration that I wanted to go on with that film. I had made a few documentaries previously, but I had shot like in the Sahara in places. But this was a larger production, and it was a leap of faith, I guess you would call it, for us, the crew and the actors and everyone, to fly to Peru and hike up the mountains and down into the river valley where the Amazon rivers flow. So now I look back and I think this is in a way where it all started, because I realized once I did that, I could really do anything with filmmaking.
I mean, yeah, I would, if as a young director, if you had the capability of getting all those people on board with what you did, I can imagine that's how you'd feel. I mean, the opening shots are still some of the most incredible opening shots of any movie, with seemingly 100 people hiking up with tons of gear, these kind of treacherous mountains. And I just have to ask, like, when you were directing this crew of people, like, what was kind of the vigor or the mentality you had to kind of orchestrate that all? All these people were just down to do this thing?
Well, you have to understand, no one knew really what it would be like to go there. None of us had ever been somewhere so remote, so cut off from civilization. So I did not know what to expect. No one knew what to expect. They thought this would be a wonderful experience. We'll make a wonderful film. But when we got there and it was so hard and it was raining day after day and everyone had diarrhea, unfortunately, the mood dropped precipitously. Everyone was having a very, very horrible experience. And so what's fortunate for the film is that it comes across and you feel what it was for the Spanish conquistadors in the 1500s to be there in this new uncharted world. It was much like our experience. This was how we made a film that felt so real, was we really had that experience for ourselves.
Right. Yeah, that is something that definitely people reflect on when they think of this film, and Fitzcarraldo too, that the thing that you're presenting as a story, the sort of biopic of these people, represents in some sense what you're doing yourself. You're taking on this kind of very adventurous idea. One would say a lot of times, essentially impossible. It really feels impossible, and you can feel that in the film, just like the effort people are going through. The jungle feels so alive because you are there. And, in some sense, I know you've done a lot of documentary films, and I get the sense sometimes watching your fictional films that there's like a documentary quality to them. So even though this is, based in the 1500s, it sort of feels like we've discovered sort of like lost footage from that time. And it just gives the movie a very magical feeling that separates it from other films that were done at that time.
I would agree, yes, and I do approach documentary and feature filmmaking differently, but they're all movies to me. So they need to express something novel, a new experience that you have never yourself felt before. And so when we were making a feature film, it was necessary for the actors and myself and the crew to be experiencing something that we had never experienced before either.
Right. When I was mentioning the cast and crew that the people that you've probably met and the relationships you've built over the years, one that obviously comes to mind for most people is the sort of star of the movie, Kinski.
Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that? How do you feel about him today and your relationship? And
Oh, he was impossible. Truly, the worst person to work with, and yet he had a presence on camera that was implacable. You could not replace him, for lack of a better word. So we put up with his sour moods, and it was very, very hard. He would get mad. He would threaten to leave, and I would tell him I was going to kill him if he left the film. So we went back and forth like this many times, but the end result was we always, made a good film. So I am glad that we fought through those difficulties each time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he made everybody's life a little more difficult on set, in some sense, like other actors and various people. Would that be true to say?
Yes, I mean, he had an enormously inflated sense of himself. You would tell him he did a good job, and he would say, "No, I did not do a good job. I did the best job ever. No one has ever done a job like this." He would say these sorts of things. So really, impossible is the one word to describe him, and everyone felt this way.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's amazing. He must have had such an effect on you, and he does have a presence on film. You can see it, but it really must have, because you then cast him in other films after this one too. So
he was confident enough and foolhardy enough each time to go with me to these places and make these very adventurous, unrendered films. These films that had no precedent to them.
Yeah. What do you mean? Well, what do you mean they had no precedent to them? What do you mean by that?
Well, I just mean that by that time, the technology had advanced enough that the cameras could be carried handheld on very long hikes and things, and we could, shoot very cheaply. We did not have a budget like you would have for a Hollywood film. We were doing things that people in the past had never had the opportunity really to do. And we were looking to Godard. We were looking to other filmmakers who said, go out and write poetry with the camera. That's really what we were doing, was writing a poetry, which was not really allowed before.
Yeah. Yeah, your cinematographer, Thomas Mausch, I think his name is. It doesn't seem like he had a lot of experience in feature films, but he did have a lot of films that he was doing. He seems pretty prolific up until this time. But what you have him do really is novel. You're having him carry up all these cameras into the jungle, and the rain. I imagine the rain must have been such an experience.
And the monkeys,
the monkeys,
the tiny monkeys. The trappers almost sold them away to Miami from under my nose, and I had to track them down to the airport and tell them I'm a veterinarian and I need to examine these monkeys. These monkeys cannot leave the country. And that is when I was able to acquire them and use them at the end of the film.
Yeah, you did the same. You do these types of things. You have like every director has their things that they're kind of known for. And I remember watching Nosferatu and being absolutely amazed by how many rats you had on set. I mean, I think it must have been thousands and thousands of rats that you put in the streets of wherever you were shooting.
In a sense, yes, rats, monkeys, animals are real. They are not actors. They cannot act. They are always just existing. So you put them in the film and it makes the film real. But also, when you put a lot of them in a film, the effect is to heighten, to get at some realer truth, because these things, they do not, the screen, the film is like a barrier to what is happening. So you have to heighten for people to really feel what is going on.
Well, yeah. So like, I think to you, I'm guessing that means that you're there to really capture something that you're seeing, which what you're saying is this kind of element of truth, kind of something raw. And in the credits, I see that you're now listed as an editor. You're listed as a director, producer, and a writer, but you're having somebody else. And I think you worked with this person for all of your fictional films. You have someone else edit. Did they pretty much did you just let them edit the film themselves? Did you have any thoughts?
No. We worked very closely the entire time to achieve that feeling of the real and right. The actors did a good job, but it was really in the edits that we found the performances, because so much is wordlessly these people feeling dejected, feeling so desperate and alone in this harsh environment. And those were shots that were not really performances. Those were just shots of them really feeling those things in the midst of making the film. So when we put those into the film, myself and the editor, it gave the impression, yes, like you say, documentary impression of this really happening. Yes.
Yeah, there's always like a blurred line between reality and acting with most of your films in general, but this one, of course. And it really provides that feeling of being there and actually in the jungle with these people. Before I kind of ask any questions or thoughts or offer thoughts about parts of the film itself, I do wonder, having thought about it for the decades after making it, is there anything about the film that you feel people don't get right, or do you feel like there's any part of it that, like, the original intent you had for it that may have maybe missing over the years, something that people don't? Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Well, I would have to say, originally, the film was shot entirely in English. Everyone spoke English on the set. And I would not do this today, but I was still early in my career, and we wanted to be sure to sell the film, more easily, and to have it in English would make that a possibility. But the audio, when we returned, did not. It was horrible. It sounded incomprehensible. So everyone dubbed over their parts in German after the fact. So that was unanticipated, and I would not do that. Making a film, and there's a strange effect to have these conquistadors all speaking German, and the German accents in this. It's strange, but I think it works. I don't think I would make a film quite in this way.
Yeah, there's a sort of disorienting quality to it that I would say adds to the descending quality that you experience throughout as the characters all sort of descend into madness. They go crazy, and so dubbing a different language over top of a language that just adds to the delirium aspect, I would say.
And I will say, I once had the opportunity to watch the Pasolini film, The Gospel According to Matthew, one of my favorite films. But it was dubbed into English very poorly. And this did grate on my ears. Greatly great on my ears. So there's a power to the imagery, but it's very important to get those things right. I think one thing people don't understand about Aguirre is it is a funny film, and people weren't ready for a funny film about something serious. So they didn't know to laugh at these things. Now people laugh at the film very often, because it is funny and absurd and over the top. So that maybe the German enhances that humor to the film. I don't know. It seems that people still like it today, so that is a good thing for me.
Oh yeah, that actually surprises me to some degree that people didn't think it was funny when it came out. But I mean,
maybe they did. Maybe they did not know how to talk about it. You know, the critics, they thought maybe I'm not supposed to laugh. I shouldn't tell people it's a funny film. You know, they're very scared for their careers.
It's true. It's true. It's the sort of things that you did. I imagine you had some sort of script for it, but so much of it also feels improvised. For example, you're down by the river. You have all of the actors there, and there's a set of sequences where the river's at a certain level, and then suddenly, the river has risen. There's flooding going on. And it really, I mean, this river really does look like it's flooding for real. It's past the rocks, and you're picking things up that are in the river and all that stuff. I mean, one of the funny parts there, why I was thinking of it, is the main character. I forget the actual character's name.
You were not speaking of Aguirre?
Yeah, is that his name, Aguirre?
Yes.
I thought he just called himself that.
And
Don
he
Lope,
called him. He
yeah.
called himself the Wrath of God. That is what the name he gave himself.
I see.
But he was Aguirre
Yeah.
in a Christian sense.
I see. Well, what does that mean?
I don't remember.
It's been a long time.
Yes, I'm very old now. I'm sorry to say.
I did read the book Lost City of Z, which is about these guys who search for that city of gold, and you do get right just how harrowing it was, but the actual details that one can read about it is like, if you just get cut a little bit, you get infected like by the end of the day, and you had to deal with all sorts of bugs and snakes, and the things that they went through were, I mean, just unimaginable. And then you go and you do that. You go and you send a cast and crew to go do the exact same thing. It's amazing.
I would simply never make a film on a set pretending, making the mud with the plaster or something. This would be ridiculous. It would not work. So to really be there was so important to this film.
Yeah. Do you remember like how many times did you feel like I made the wrong decision actually though? Because I get that you wouldn't want to do this in a set, and that feels fake and forged and all that kind of thing. But how many moments, and do you remember any moment in particular where you thought to yourself, "Oh man, this might not have been a good idea, and maybe we should call it quits"?
My memory is not the same as it once was, and I don't bring to mind specifics. Certainly, I had my doubts while we were making the film, and we found ourselves shooting many scenes in the same place, just out of necessity, out of a sort of convenience. We would stage much of the narrative in one area, and then of course we figured out how to shoot on the raft in that wide calmer river, and in the later part of the film, and we there was in the script, but that became much more of the film than I think we anticipated. But I am at this point speculating because I do not remember these things very well at all.
Yeah. I would assume of you that you just have a great confidence and a great sense of, as you might call it, like an existential kind of the existential void. It's always around us. So what else is there to do but to do the thing as real as you can? So you're in the jungle, and you decide not just to shoot a film about these guys kind of forging their way through the jungle to find this lost city of gold, but you're now deciding at some point to imagine that there's this tribe who are after you, and you find their kind of huts, right? And you build all these huts. I don't know if you found the huts or you built them. I'm guessing you built them. And then you have everyone go up there, the characters, light these forts on fire. So you're out in the middle of the forest. But who knows how long it's been, right? And you then build forts and burn the forts down, and then shoot all this happening. I mean, you have to I imagine the way your mind works is like it just has very little fear. And if there is any fear, it always in tandem has like a courage alongside it. So it's like you're always pushing towards something fearful, something horrendous, something existential. You're moving towards that, while at the same time knowing that as you do that, you have to have a force of just utter confidence at the same time.
Well, you get it. This is correct partly. I am always afraid. Life is meaningless, purposeless at the end of it all. But I tried to make meaning with filmmaking. I always knew from a teenager that I would be a poet, a filmmaker. So despite being afraid, I always am exploring things I do not know, and that is where the art, the poetry comes from. We had to build these forts, and we had to burn these huts, these things, because we didn't know what would happen.
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Hey, Zach, can I get in on? Sorry, I'm late. Can I?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Werner, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. I know you don't have much time, and you're off your next project here you're working on.
Yes, I'm making 4 more films this month, so I do really have to leave immediately.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Zachary. Wow, I'm sorry I missed that. I'm sure that was really interesting to talk to him, and I'll have to listen back.
Yeah, it was wild because I literally didn't know I was going to be talking to him because he didn't get back to us until literally a minute before the podcast was going to start, and so I had to quickly. I was like preparing questions while I was talking to him. So you really did miss it. I mean, it would have been nice of him or one of his agents, I guess, to have contacted us earlier on. But
yeah, I wonder if that's just how his normal way of doing things. Surprise people.
Yeah, I should have reminded him of something he once said, which was, "Every gray hair on my head I call Kinski." I forgot to mention that or remind him of that line. But yeah, we talked about Kinski, we talked about Aguirre, and it was great.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably crazy to look back on that now. Like, it was 50 some years ago. It was a totally different world. Yeah, he was one of those first guys, like, going out in the jungle making a movie, sort of. In the modern way.
Yeah. Like a rogue, like such a rogue person, like he's like kind of alien in a way.
No, I'll just say, because I haven't shared my thoughts, I had a terrific time watching this film.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary, The Land of Silence and Darkness, something like that. Mm-hmm. That he did before this, which was really good, very interesting. This empathetic, portrait of these people who are blind and deaf and how they navigate the world and communicate with people, the sort of gulf of communication when you have those kinds of disabilities. Really good movie. So going into Aguirre, I didn't know that he was such a funny filmmaker. And this was the real discovery of the thing. It was hilarious. It was a really good time. And that's amazing that he's so funny.
Yeah. I watched it with a friend of mine, and good sense of humor, and we laughing through much of it. And it's weird because you're kind of watching these people, knowing too that it happened and that they did it, and watching them kind of descend into madness, and yet it's comical all the way. And that's how to deal with it, right? Obviously, this is the cliche. Tragedy and comedy are twins in a way, and you need comedy to deal with the tragedy.
Yeah, it's like mounting a sort of Shakespeare play in the jungle. Almost with all this kind of like melodramatics and absurdity and all the, in the same way that he could, merge all of that stuff together. Yeah. That's what you get in this.
You get that. And you also just get like such a raw, I mean, it's like It's really like nothing else that came before it. I don't think.
Yeah, someone identified it as a post-colonial film because this is time when Europe is, loosening the grasp or being forced to give up their colonies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Really kind of kicking off in the 50s and 60s, but as we'll find out, talk about Samba Sanga, like that was still going on into the 70s too. But this is someone kind of born after that with a critical eye towards colonialism, making a film about colonists. So I think that's where this kind of humor and really zeroing in on the absurdity comes in. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just making this a story about folly, about how misguided they were, and how close the border was between the ones that succeeded and, took over countries and became extremely wealthy, and the ones that went too far and made very hubristic mistakes and died face down in the mud somewhere. It was a thin line between those two.
And so for that reason, it's called a post-colonial.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it's about the early colonial, it's about the early colonial time in a way. I know that there was history of things going on before that, but the real expansion begins in 1500s and then now this is being shot in a kind of post-colonial time. So that's interesting that it's kind of capturing both those bookends. Yeah.
Yeah. We're used to these post-colonial ideas now, but it was a new form of thinking for these young generations at this time. And this is some of the first art reflecting that. And yeah, I mean, here it's coming from a German, which is kind of a strange thing, We've watched, Black Girl, you might call that a post-colonial work as well, from an African director. But, the rest of the world is kind of catching up now and grappling with the legacy of colonialism.
Yeah, what is the White Devil, Black God?
Yeah. I was definitely thinking about him.
I would emphasize that the difference between a lot of the other things, a lot of the other pieces of work done that we could call post-colonial, and this is just that this is capturing when it all began at the same time, and in doing so, it's sort of wonderfully, like you said, with a lot of humor, but just in a very raw and documentary feel, showcasing how crazy these people were. So the earliest colonialists were crazy. They were absolutely crazy. And they really, oftentimes, they did things like what are shown in this movie, whereas they kind of drove themselves to madness. I mean, another really well-known story, for example, is Salem, the witchcraft stuff. That happens from an isolated group of people who are on the edge of the world and kind of in between worlds. They're on the edge of their own country they came from, civilization they came from, and they're up against this civilization that they know nothing else about. And I think at that fringe, you just find a lot of madness and a lot of craziness. Say what you will about it, right or wrong, who knows? There was a lot of pressures going on, and historically, it was a crazy time. But one thing that's for sure is they were crazy.
Yeah. That certain strand of craziness that runs through humanity.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna push at the boundaries and go out and do the craziest possible stuff, much like Herzog himself.
Yeah.
Decide to shoot a ridiculous film like this.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, well, it's when the whole world has been tamed or, discovered or whatever, I guess what's left to do is now make a movie in the same way.
Sort of plunder the past, what is undiscovered or not yet understood about the past. And like it's I think it is effective just to see like these soldiers in their metal armor trekking through the jungle, how absurd they look. I'm thinking of The Piano, Jane Campion's film as well, which shows the same kind of thing when white people were moving into New Zealand, which is also like very kind of jungle, swampy in certain areas. And they were totally unequipped, you know, it's like Victorian English people showing up with wearing big gowns and trying to like walk through, you know, inches of mud. And that's the kind of thing that you see in Aguirre as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like you always have this sense of the nature out, you know, beyond them. You have the kind of the anonymous indigenous people who were, you know, firing arrows and kind of wreaking havoc for them. But just the way that it feels like nature itself is kind of creeping in at the edges to come swallow them up. I love the later shot after they've been on the raft for a while, and there's like now moss growing in the cracks where the like water has formed little pools between the logs. Like it's like the raft itself will eventually kind of like succumb to the elements, but they've built this little island for themselves, and they're not going to be able to like isolate themselves from that nature out there.
Right.
And they're like looking for something, but they're trying to like oppose the nature. They want to go further in, but they want to be apart from it still. It's
yeah,
absurdly hubristic.
Yeah, it's I feel like of any director, he's got to be one of the most blurring the lines director, and you can find so many different examples of like what kind of lines he's blurring. But like, I don't know if there's been any director that's blurred the lines as much as he had between what's real and what's acted, between nature and humanity, between cast and crew, you know, and how much involvement he had and other people had on set. And
yeah, I do think of Godard because I think as a person, Godard is not like that smart. He's sort of full of himself. He's sort of spouting off with this philosophizing in his films that feels very uninformed by like lived experience. I don't know. You know, he's really trying to be smarter than he is, I feel like. And there's something similar in Herzog where he's trying to capture all of human experience. Like, what does it mean to be human, and what are the limits of that, and you know what's the meaning of life, and all the like he aims as high as possible, and that itself is kind of like feels arrogant, feels crazy, but you know, it takes someone like that to show us, I don't know, what's possible and what we can try to strive for, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think like there are times where certain directors like Godard or Herzog can kind of go, they can cross certain lines, you know? But I feel like, what do you lose if you're not willing to risk crossing those lines? And there's obvious lines that are like definitely shouldn't be crossed, like people dying, things like that. But like, yeah, you don't get things that are just as magical as this or as magical as Breathless if you don't have some guy just rallying people behind him and selling to producers to fund his work, and then kind of ending up with this sort of unbelievable piece of work. Like there's movies that are amazing in a way that is like produced. Do you know what I mean? So like obviously Hollywood, that's all they do. But there are some amazing movies that have come out of the Hollywood production, like Godfather, obviously, and so many more. But there's always a sense of production when it comes from like a majorly produced studio. Even if it's as like authentic as it can possibly be, it's still like you still feel this sense that it is a production. And then you have these films that have a tiny crew and a handheld camera, like Breathless, like Aguirre. And the feeling you get from it is that it is not a production. And then if it's done well, like the two movies here that we're talking about, then it has this like unproduced, masterful feeling. Like it's somehow all the pieces work, and it doesn't feel produced. And I think that that's a feeling that you don't see much of, because as soon as people get money, that's the other thing. As soon as people get money, let's say that there's some director who has like a less produced film they did in the beginning of their career. Well, as soon as they got money, or like major producers were into what they were doing, they get all this money, and then they have movies that feel produced. This is something that happens all the time.
Well, look at like John Waters or something. Like, he did Hairspray later on. It was interesting to make that like a kind of Hollywood film, and like have Divine in that film. Like you did something there, but I don't think he ever got back to the magic of his early stuff, Pink Flamingos and Multiple Maniacs and stuff, where he was just, making that cheap stuff with his friends and doing whatever he wanted. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And then there's these rare directors who, they confine themselves, and they give themselves limitations. And I think for me personally, what is produced with limitations often feels better. As great as a produced film can be, I think I often am more jazzed and more excited about something that had limitations, and despite those limitations, created something that was like unbelievable. So Aguirre is one of those.
Yeah. Filmmakers always have to be conscious of like, what is the audience used to? What are they expecting? What is no longer surprising to them? I think they can even get used to the cheap films, the less produced films. You just then have to kind of switch it up again and try to do new things.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question in regards to this, specifically about this film at the end here. There's a few moments that stand out to me, and I'm just curious what your experience of them were. One is the boat in the tree.
Oh,
like when you see
crazy.
It, you see it, and you're just like, what?
Yeah. That's like one of those Tarkovsky moments. You're like, did they somehow put that that ship up there? Did they find that? Yeah. I have no way of knowing, really. I don't know if Herzog or anyone's given an answer to that. Wow. But it is one of those, magic moments.
Yeah, it was all magic. Yeah, and then lighting the huts on fire, the monkeys. The
monkeys. I love the monkeys jumping off the raft and swimming to shore.
Yeah,
just like disappearing down the river. It's great. Yeah, you're like, holy shit, there's so many monkeys. They just they start out in that little clump, and then they scatter, and it's like there's more and more and more.
There's more, yeah. I guess the trivia there that I saw is that so he got the monkeys, but then he freed the monkeys. He let them back into the wild.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I guess you could have gone and tried to retrap them all again.
No, just let them go.
Just let them go. I love that. Let them be free.
And then I think that's
I love the
there was one of them.
I don't know, the kind of political machinations are really funny the entire time, and just Kinski, Aguirre being like, we should elect this nobleman to be our king, and then they start saying he's going to be the king of Spain entirely. We're going to get to El Dorado. We're almost there. And you're going to be the new emperor. Next, we'll sail on Spain and we'll take the colonies and all that. Meanwhile, like everyone, they're literally counting the kernels of corn. I love when someone says that out loud and then you see them actually doing it.
Yeah.
And the emperor noble guy is like eating mangoes and stuff, and everyone else is just kind of starving and staring at him. Play the flute, play a song.
Herzog just finds this guy who knows how to play flute down there and has him play this kind of like very kind of breathy, faint flute at times. I wonder if that was from the like repeated number of times he was having him do it. And after a while, it was kind of like, but that was fun.
Yeah, really good. And then that music, right, by Popova.
Yeah.
I guess as I understood it, reading about this, he just scored this with like pre-existing music.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And then I think later on they kind of capitalized on the film and put out an album.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and they start right with it too. Right in the beginning, you have that grand synth type sound and that shot, and so it really opens with. The interesting thing about the way this movie progresses too is that it opens so grand, tons of people, huge vista, huge music, and the first half is like rushing river, and they're on a raft in the middle of this river, and they're kind of all excited. There's people shooting each other. There's so much action, and like as the movie progresses, it like slowly gets less and less. There's less and less action as it moves on, and it gets kind of slower. But that slowness is a sort of like we said, it's like a
like madness setting.
Yeah, you're going into a madness, and so
it's like the claustrophobia of being isolated out there.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, somehow I don't know how, but it does.
Yeah. You know what's an incredible shot is when Aguirre's daughter dies. Because you just see her standing at the edge of the raft with her back to the camera until he goes over and she kind of falls into his arms, and you see that she's got an arrow, in her chest. Right. Yeah, like for as silly as some of the stuff is sometimes, that is a hammer blow of a way to show that happening.
Yeah, right.
He's a really skilled director.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I can think to say here too is that I've read, or I think I read something, and I also saw something about the actual lost city, because scientists have always been fascinated by whether or not it really existed. The very earliest writings from somebody who went out there, he describes this sort of fortresses that he saw in the jungle, these huge towers that rose above the canopy. And he says they were glittering with gold, but that part could be a bit more, fictionalized. But the fact that he sees this kind of city feels like, why would you fictionalize that? And they've done studies now. They have like actual LiDAR, I think it's called, where they can scan the land from a helicopter or plane. And they find these huge, massive grids in the Amazon that like was otherwise just plain jungle. And even where they're kind of still pushing the forest back for cattle farms or whatever they're doing down there in Brazil, they uncover these areas of large grids. And so a lot of science has been uncovering that there's probably was a huge civilization there at one point.
Yeah, well, this is what we're finding out more and more, is that there was a great diversity of society structures and stuff in the past. Mm-hmm. And that it wasn't all the hunter-gatherer stuff that we imagine, that slowly formed into civilization, that those things existed right beside each other, and they changed all the time, and people were building huge structures, that there's kind of a vast history that we know very little about. And yeah, like, you know, there were probably cities out there that became just like legend as they like slowly faded away.
Mm-hmm. And most likely made of wood. That's the reason why they wouldn't have found it by the time they got there. Like you said, that moss had already covered the wood, so it only needed like one rainy season to wipe the civilization away when there was no people left to upkeep it. So crazy what we don't know and what we'll never know probably. But at the end of the day, we have artists like Herzog to try to show us the way through this crazy life. Huh?
Yeah. Opening more doors. People are just going to make crazier and crazier films as we continue to explore the rest of the 70s here.
Buckle up. So, what in terms of that, what's next on the agenda?
Next, we'll be talking about Sarah Maldoror's film, Samba Zanga, which is considered the first feature film from Africa directed by a woman, the first feature film from a Portuguese-speaking African country. This is something looking at the fight for independence as it was still going on in Angola. Kind of crazy. Maldoror was an assistant on Battle of Algiers, so we'll see, you know, how does this compare to that film, but I'm very excited to see what this looks like.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds great. Do you think we should do like a little like end of the year kind of talk about some of the favorite films we've seen?
Yeah. Should we talk about our highlights from 2025 and also think about adding some more films to the list to bring us up to an even 500?
Yeah, we got to do it. That's been long overdue, so we'll do that too. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think that will come sometime in January, around the start of the year.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Go to unauthorizedpod.com and you can find more information in our letterboxes and stuff.
Yes. Some writings to come, and yeah. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, check out the trailer for the short film that we did as well.
Go check that out. That'll be releasing on the 9th of January, so be sure to check that out. All right,
till next time. Peace. It would be really funny if the